It's Prowl 1701 here, and today we're going to talk about modern Doctor Who. And I'm going to talk about 10 modern Doctor Who stories that could use some updated effects. Now, if you follow classic Doctor Who and the classic Doctor Who, the collection range, you do know that oftentimes the box sets get at least one story where they create optional updated effects you could watch with that story. And then of course they also carry over any stories that had optional updated effects on their DVD releases. So something like season 20, you're getting optional updated effects for 6 stories out of the 7 actually. But most box sets, it's either the DVDs carried over and plus maybe one new story gets optional updated effects, which for me, more times than not, do improve the story. I almost always prefer the updated effects. There's a couple instances where I don't, but usually I do. So I love the idea of giving the story some optional effects to look better. Now, modern Doctor Who, specifically looking at the Russell T Davies era on this list, being almost 20 years old now, some of the effects do look dated. I mean, Doctor Who has always been done on a budget, and even the early eras of the modern series, the Russell T Davies 1 era, let's call it, of course had a smaller budget than the show had even when Moffat took over. There's a huge jump in quality between the end of time and the 11th hour. You can absolutely tell there was a budget increase for the show, and it's only gotten even more so like that with a huge budget increase for what looked like the Whittaker era, a huge budget increase moving into the 60th anniversaries, and the season 1 era with Ncuti Gatwa with Disney money coming in now. So going back and looking at some of those eras with the 9th and 10th Doctors, some of the episodes do look a little dated and a little in need of some updated effects, especially for me, because I find it a lot easier looking at dated practical effects than I do dated CGI effects. Like classic Who, most of the time doesn't really bother me with its effects. You know, if your monster is green painted bubble wrap, I can roll with that typically. Old school practical effects typically don't bother me. Every now and then I'll have a moment, but it typically doesn't bother me. Whereas dated CGI effects like Mortal Kombat Armageddon, I have a much harder time rolling with. It's just bad. So we're going to talk about 10 stories from classic modern Doctor Who, all in the Russell T Davies 1 era, that I think could benefit from some updated effects. Now, 4 of these fall into a subcategory where it's mainly just the monsters in them, where the episodes themselves are fine, except for the monsters in them look dated and needs a fresh coat of paint on them. That's all you'd really have to touch up is those monsters themselves, and the episode would look good. And we're going to talk about those 4 first, and then we'll move on to stories that need a little more done to them. The first one on the list is School Reunion. The bat creatures look very dated when they're flying around. I noticed that last time I looked School Reunion. Last time I watched School Reunion. I can't talk today. I was sitting there going, the bat creatures. I mean, it's an episode that came out in 2006. That's almost 20 years ago. And it's on a BBC budget. My willing suspension of disbelief has a little trouble there. I can roll with it, but a little trouble there. I would love if perhaps the bat creatures got a nice fresh coat of paint to make them look a little scarier, a little more intimidating. I think that's all the story really needs to really make it work, which the story works fine as is, but to really bump it up to turn it up to 11, so to speak. The next one on the list like that is, I can't read my handwriting, Tooth and Claw. Tooth and Claw, and that's not much of an issue. It's mainly the werewolf itself, which I'm going to be honest, for me actually holds up pretty well. It's obviously CGI, but I think it's pretty good CGI for the time. This one's more of a nitpick. I think the wolf is pretty well done. I'm fine with it. I can actually roll with it pretty easily. I like Tooth and Claw a lot. But I wouldn't mind it not only getting a fresh coat of paint, but maybe making it look a little scarier, a little spookier, a little more deadly. And then the scene at the end when the wolf is caught in the trap and sort of dissolves away, I would like to see that effect updated. Just a fresh little coat of paint there, and I think that would, again, dial that one up to 11. Another one is the Fires of Pompeii. I think really it's just the monsters at the end. Could use a fresh coat of paint. Again, that's kind of nitpicking. I'm not a big Fires of Pompeii fan. I'm really not. It doesn't do a lot for me. But going off my memory of the episode, I really think that's all it would need is the villains at the end, because again, that CGI looks a little, by today's standards, giving that a little fresh lick of paint, I think would make that episode stand out a little better. And then the last one is Father's Day. The bat creatures from Father's Day look really rough. Like, go back and rewatch Father's Day. They look rough. Again, for some reason, I just have trouble looking at dated CGI, whereas dated practical effects tend not to bother me much. I don't know why. That's just me. That's just subjectively me. So trying to watch Father's Day with those bat creatures, I struggle. It's a good episode, but I struggle a little bit. So, you know, doing some new effects for the bat creatures, I think, would get that story up to the legendary status it deserves to be at. And those are the ones where it's mainly just that. Now, another one that I guess this one could actually fall under that too, but since it's the number one story I wrote down, when I thought about doing this list, this was the first story that came to mind, because it's kind of the poster child of that, is the Lazarus Experiment. And again, all it really needs is the creature, but the creature really needs to be rethought. Not just touched up. I think they need to redesign the whole look of it, where instead of having the face on it, maybe it's just a black, oozing, dripping scorpion thing. Something totally alien and unexpected. I really think they should not only redo the effects for the creatures in the Lazarus Experiment, I think they should redesign the creature to be more like the stuff out of Nightmares, where evolution really took a different turn, personally. But I love the Lazarus Experiment. I think it's a very underrated episode. I enjoy the story. I enjoy the performances. It's just the creature that really lets it down. And I think it's the poster child of modern Doctor Who needing updated effects. It is the one where anytime I hear a younger person talking about, well, I can't watch classic Doctor Who because the effects look so bad, I point to Lazarus Experiment and go, So yeah, a Lazarus Experiment, I really think if you just redesigned the monster and really gave it, you know, some nice 2024 effects or something akin to that, I think it would be held in a better light by the fandom. That is the one I probably want the most. Next is End of the World. Just a lot of the effects for End of the World have just dated bad. The space scenes, the light shining through cracks, killing people, just a lot of the effects, the giant fans in the room, just a lot of the effects. A lot of the effects for End of the World have just dated terribly, in my opinion. It's a good story. I like End of the World a lot. I just feel like there's a lot. There's a lot with that one. It looks like a production from the mid-2000s. I don't know what it would take to really get that one up to specs, so to speak. But yeah, there's a lot you could do with that one. Next is Rose. Again, just some quality of life improvements. I think they should realize the Auton, the Nestine consciousness better. I think the garbage can that swallows Mickey could be done better and cut out the burp. The fake Mickey could be done better. There's definitely some stuff. I'm not saying it needs a lot, but there's definitely some stuff there you could do to really make it pop a little more, especially being the first episode of the modern series. And then, let me see what all I've covered here. The Impossible Planet and the Satan Pit, much like End of the World, has a lot you could do there. When the 10th Doctor confronts the Beast looks way too CGI. Like, it looks good when it's appearing more in the background, like on scanners, that holds up, but when he confronts it at the end, it's very obviously CGI and has not dated well CGI. And then a lot of these scenes where it's showing them in space, like at the end when they're having to navigate in space, has also dated very badly. Especially for such a strong episode. It's such a good episode. But I feel like the effects, for me personally, of the arc in space have dated better, even with green bubble wrap, than the effects in this. Because again, I can roll with practical effects, whereas I don't roll so much with what's going on here. Although I'd love for Ark in Space to get some updated effects as well. Some updated effects to its updated effects, because Ark in Space has had updated effects, but those updated effects need updated effects. But yeah, I'd love for the Satan Pit 2-parter to get some updated effects to really make it pop as well, because it's such a good story. The End of Time could use a few things. Primarily for me, what drives me nuts is the Master's head when it turns into the Skeletor thing. That just looks weird. I wish it turned into something a little creepier and scarier and more unnerving. That's the main effect that comes to my mind, is making that better. But I'm sure there's some other ones in there I'm not thinking of. Maybe some stuff with the Time Lords returning, making that portal a little better. There was at least 1 or 2 things I had planned in my head for that before I started the video. But I still feel like, oh yeah, and when their heads are changing, when the Master's... The Master becoming everybody else and then becoming back to everybody else, that sentence came out really weird, is done in this really comical way where they're doing this. They treat it very tongue-in-cheek. You could actually do more with that. I feel like you could redo that effect and make it a little more terrifying as well, honestly, where it's a little more scary what's happening to these people. That would be really cool as well, to me. And then last on the list, just because I was trying to find a way to round it out, I'd say 42. 42 is a good episode, but I do feel like some of its effects, like the light in people's eyes and stuff, maybe you could do more with. And then some of the space effects, I feel like, could use some touching up. I feel like there is a little that you could do there just to give it a slick little coat of paint, honestly. And those are the 10 I'm going to talk about today. I want to know what you think of this list, and if there's some that I haven't mentioned that you could think of could use some updated effects. Maybe something post-RTD. I couldn't really think of anything post-RTD that really needed it because there was such a budget increase from Matt Smith's run on. I feel like those effects stand up pretty well, but maybe there's something I've overlooked. Comment down below and let's talk about it. Don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button as well. I also have a Patreon if you would like to support me on that. There's a link to that down in the description below. Several different tiers there to choose from. My entry-level tier is only $2 a month. I want to give a shout out to some of my top tier patrons, Colin Coney, Finn Perkins, and Stephen Crane. I appreciate their support, as I do the support of all of my patrons. I also have my P.O. box down there if there's anything you'd like to send me to look at and review. A link to my Amazon wishlist is down there, and a link to my Amazon UK wishlist is down there as well. Most importantly, thank you for watching.